You're standing on a Florida beach at twilight, watching the sun paint the Atlantic Ocean in shades of gold and crimson. The water stretches endlessly before you, and somewhere out there, beyond the horizon, lies one of the most talked about mysteries in modern history. Ships have crossed these waters for centuries. Planes have flown overhead on routine flights. And yet, whisper the name Bermuda Triangle at any gathering and watch as people lean in, ready to share stories of vanished vessels, disappearing aircraft, and the strange reputation of this particular patch of ocean. Welcome back to Midnight Deep Dive, or if you're new here, welcome to our cozy corner of the internet, where we explore fascinating topics designed to ease you gently into sleep. Tonight, we're setting sail into the Bermuda Triangle, that legendary stretch of Atlantic Ocean where, according to popular lore, ships and planes have vanished without a trace. Compasses spin wildly, and the normal rules of reality seem to bend. So find your most comfortable position. Let the day's concerns drift away like ships beyond the horizon, and join me as we navigate through legend, science, and the enduring human fascination with the unexplained. If you pull up a map of the Atlantic Ocean and draw a line from Miami, Florida to San Juan, Puerto Rico, then up to Bermuda, and back to Miami, you've just outlined the most famous triangle in popular culture. Roughly 500,000 square miles of ocean, sitting between the southeastern United States coast and the Caribbean islands. On any given day, this area sees dozens of commercial flights, hundreds of pleasure craft, cargo ships carrying goods between continents, cruise ships full of vacationers, and Coast Guard vessels going about their business. It's one of the most heavily traveled pieces of ocean in the world. But here's something interesting. The triangle isn't really a triangle at all, at least not officially. There's no universally agreed upon boundary for the Bermuda Triangle. Different writers and researchers have described it differently. Some include the Gulf of Mexico. Others extend it far into the Atlantic or down into the Caribbean. The name itself doesn't appear on any official maps. The U.S. Board on Geographic Names doesn't recognize it. The Coast Guard doesn't have a specific designation for it. It's a cultural construct, a region defined by stories rather than by coordinates. So where did this triangle come from? The region has been known to sailors for centuries, but not by this name. Spanish sailors in the 1500s knew these waters well. They had to cross them to reach Spain from the Americas. Christopher Columbus sailed through this area on his voyages, and his journals mention some unusual observations. He wrote about his compass behaving strangely, pointing several degrees off from true north. He described seeing strange lights in the sky. He noted areas of the ocean covered in seaweed, so thick it looked like land. Those observations were real. Columbus was likely encountering what we now call the Sargasso Sea, a region within what would later be called the Bermuda Triangle, where floating sargassum seaweed accumulates in huge mats. The compass variation he noticed is also real. This region is one of the few places on Earth where true north and magnetic north align at certain locations, which can confuse navigation if you don't account for it. The strange lights, possibly St. Elmo's fire, a weather phenomenon where atmospheric electricity creates glowing plasma. Or perhaps bioluminescence from marine organisms. Columbus didn't know these explanations, so he recorded them as mysteries. For centuries after Columbus, this stretch of ocean was simply known as part of the Atlantic. It was busy with shipping traffic, particularly during the colonial era when European powers were establishing Caribbean and American holdings. Ships carried gold, silver, sugar, tobacco, rum, slaves, and countless other goods across these waters. Some ships were lost to hurricanes, others to pirates. Some to simple navigational error or poor ship construction. The ocean was dangerous, but not supernaturally so. The first hint of the triangle's modern reputation appeared in the 1950s. A journalist named Edward Van Winkle Jones wrote an article for the Associated Press in 1950 about unusual disappearances in the region. He mentioned several lost ships and noted that the area was developing a mysterious reputation. But his article didn't create a sensation. It was simply a piece about maritime mysteries, one of many published over the years. Then came 1964, and a man named Vincent Gaddis. He wrote an article for Argosy magazine, a men's adventure magazine that featured stories about unusual phenomena, lost civilizations, and strange events, titled The Deadly Bermuda Triangle. This was the first time those three words appeared together in print. Gaddis drew his triangle from Miami to Puerto Rico to Bermuda and back, establishing the boundaries that would become standard. He compiled a list of ships and aircraft that had disappeared in the region, and suggested that something unusual was happening there. Gaddis's article captured public imagination in a way earlier reports hadn't. This was the 1960s, remember, an era fascinated by the unexplained, when UFO sightings were regularly reported, when the government was conducting secret projects that would later be revealed, when space exploration was showing us how much we didn't know about the universe. The idea that a region of Earth's ocean might harbor some mysterious force felt entirely plausible. The name worked perfectly. Bermuda Triangle had a ring to it, a geographical mystique. It sounded official, like something scientists had named. The triangle shape suggested geometry, mathematics, precision. It made the mystery seem bounded, definable, even though the ocean pays no attention to imaginary lines drawn on maps. What exactly was this region known for before it became the Bermuda Triangle? Mainly weather. The area sits in a part of the Atlantic that's affected by multiple weather systems. Caribbean hurricanes form to the south and east, often tracking through the region. The Gulf Stream, one of the world's most powerful ocean currents, flows through the triangle, moving north at speeds up to 5.5 miles per hour. This warm current moving through cooler Atlantic waters creates complex weather patterns, sudden storms, and navigation challenges. The ocean floor in this region is also varied and dramatic. The continental shelf drops off sharply in places, plunging to depths of over 6,000 meters. There are underwater mountains, deep trenches, and complex topography that creates unpredictable currents. Ships that sink in some parts of the triangle can drop to depths where recovery is essentially impossible with anything but specialized equipment. For centuries, sailors knew this region required respect. Weather could change rapidly. Navigation required careful attention. The concentration of shallow reefs around Bermuda and throughout the Bahamas made nighttime navigation particularly dangerous before modern instruments. But dangerous ocean isn't the same as supernatural ocean. And for most of history, losses in this region were attributed to natural causes. The transformation from busy, occasionally dangerous shipping lane to mysterious supernatural zone happened remarkably quickly, really just over a couple of decades in the mid-20th century. And this transformation tells us something interesting about how myths are born in the modern era. They need a catchy name. They need mysterious incidents that can be compiled into a pattern. They need media willing to spread the story, and they need an audience primed to believe. The Bermuda Triangle had all of these elements. The incidents were real. Ships and planes had indeed disappeared. The compilation into a pattern was interpretive. Were these disappearances actually unusual for a heavily traveled ocean region? The media was enthusiastic. Mystery cells and the 1960s and 70s were golden ages for unexplained phenomena in popular culture. And the audience, they were ready to believe in mysteries, perhaps because the world was becoming more explained, more mapped, more understood. And humans have always needed some spaces where the unknown can still exist. So when we talk about the Bermuda Triangle, we're really talking about several things at once. There's the physical ocean, with its real weather patterns and oceanographic features. There's the historical record of maritime incidents, some well-documented, others lost to time. There's the cultural construction, the named mystery that became famous. And there's the gap between what people believe about the triangle and what the evidence actually shows. Understanding the Bermuda Triangle means understanding all these layers. It means recognizing that the ocean is genuinely dangerous and that tragic losses have occurred. It also means questioning whether those losses are actually unusual compared to other heavily traveled ocean regions. It means appreciating why humans are drawn to mysteries, while also applying critical thinking to extraordinary claims. And it means recognizing that sometimes the most interesting story isn't the legend. It's how and why the legend came to be. The Bermuda Triangle sits there still right now as you're listening to this. Planes are flying over it, ships are crossing it, weather systems are moving through it, the Gulf Stream flows, the ocean rises and falls with the tides, and whatever mysteries it holds, whatever stories have been projected onto those particular 500,000 square miles of saltwater, it continues being what it's always been. A piece of ocean, beautiful and dangerous, mundane and mysterious, depending on how you look at it. Every legend needs its foundational stories, the incidents that people point to as proof that something unusual is happening. For the Bermuda Triangle, several disappearances have become famous, repeated in books, television shows, and countless internet articles. These are the cases that built the triangle's reputation, the mysteries that seem to defy easy explanation. Let's explore the most significant of these, examining both what we know happened and what remains uncertain. The story that perhaps more than any other defined the Bermuda Triangle mystery began on December 5, 1945. Flight 19, a training mission of 5 U.S. Navy Avenger torpedo bombers, took off from Fort Lauderdale Naval Air Station in Florida. 14 men were aboard the 5 aircraft, 13 student pilots and 1 experienced flight instructor, Lieutenant Charles Taylor. It was supposed to be a routine navigation exercise, a simple out-and-back flight over the Bahamas. The flight plan called for flying east from Florida to conduct practice bombing runs at a place called Hen and Chickens Shoals, then north, then southwest back to base. Total flight time, about 2 hours. Lieutenant Taylor was an experienced pilot with over 2,500 flight hours. The weather forecast called for choppy seas but acceptable flying conditions. The Avenger aircraft were reliable and well-tested. Everything should have been routine. Around 3:40 p.m., about 2 hours into the flight, the base received a transmission from Taylor. But instead of reporting that they were returning as scheduled, Taylor sounded confused. He reported that both of his compasses had malfunctioned. He stated that he wasn't sure of their position. He thought they might be somewhere over the Florida Keys, but he wasn't certain. Ground control tried to help Taylor orient himself. They suggested he turn north, which should bring him toward Florida, but Taylor's responses became increasingly unclear. At one point, he said they were passing over a small island with no other islands visible around it. At another, he reported that everything looked strange, even the ocean didn't look right. Radio communications were difficult. Static interfered with transmissions, and not all messages were clearly received. The transmissions suggested growing confusion and concern. At one point, Taylor seemed to think they were over the Gulf of Mexico rather than the Atlantic. He made a decision to turn east, believing that would eventually bring them to Florida. But if they were actually east of Florida, as they likely were, turning east took them further into the Atlantic Ocean, away from land. As afternoon turned to evening, fuel became critical. The last clear transmission from Flight 19 came around 7 p.m., nearly 5 hours after takeoff. The 5 aircraft should have run out of fuel shortly after. Presumably, they ditched in the ocean, though no distress call indicating they were ditching was received. Now here's where the story gets even stranger. A Martin Mariner flying boat, designated Training 49, took off from Banana River Naval Air Station to search for Flight 19. This large aircraft carried a crew of 13 men. At approximately 7:30 p.m., about 20 minutes after takeoff, Training 49 disappeared. It sent no distress call. Radio contact simply ceased. The ship SS Gaines Mills, which was in the area, reported seeing an explosion and a fireball in the sky around that time, followed by oil slicks on the water. So within hours, 6 aircraft and 27 men had vanished. A massive search operation was launched, one of the largest in naval history at that time. Ships, aircraft, and submarines scoured hundreds of thousands of square miles of ocean. They found nothing, no wreckage, no life rafts, no bodies, no debris. It was as if 6 aircraft had simply been erased from existence. The Navy's official investigation concluded that Taylor had become disoriented, that the flight became lost, and that the aircraft ran out of fuel and ditched at sea. The Martin Mariner was believed to have suffered a mid-air explosion. These aircraft had a reputation for fuel leaks and were sometimes nicknamed flying gas tanks. The failure to find wreckage was attributed to the vastness of the search area and the ocean's depth in certain regions. But the disappearance of Flight 19 and Training 49 became the foundational mystery of the Bermuda Triangle legend. Writers pointed to Taylor's statements that things looked strange and that even the ocean didn't look right. They emphasized that experienced pilots with working aircraft had somehow gotten completely lost in an area they should have known. The lack of wreckage was cited as evidence of something beyond normal aircraft accidents, and the fact that a search plane also vanished seemed too coincidental to be natural. The second major incident that built the Triangle's reputation actually predated Flight 19 by decades, though it wasn't associated with the Triangle myth until later. The USS Cyclops, a massive Navy cargo ship, vanished in March 1918. The Cyclops was huge for its time, 542 feet long, carrying a crew of 306 men, loaded with 10,800 tons of manganese ore. It was traveling from Barbados to Baltimore, a routine cargo run. The ship left Barbados on March 4, 1918. It should have arrived in Baltimore by March 13. It never did. No distress signal was ever received. No wreckage was ever found. Over 300 men simply vanished along with their enormous ship. The disappearance of the Cyclops remains the single largest loss of life in U.S. naval history, not involving combat. Various theories have been proposed over the decades. Some suggest structural failure. The ship was heavily loaded, possibly overloaded, and might have broken apart in rough seas. Others point to the possibility of a German submarine attack. This was during World War I, though Germany never claimed to have sunk the Cyclops, and submarines typically left some debris or survivors. Some have suggested mutiny, or that the ship's captain, who had German heritage, might have defected. The most likely explanation involves the ship's construction and cargo. The Cyclops had a history of engine problems. The manganese ore cargo shifted easily and could destabilize the ship in rough weather. If the ship took on water and the cargo shifted, it could have capsized and sunk rapidly, too quickly to send a distress signal. In the deep Atlantic waters along its route, the wreck would be extraordinarily difficult to locate even with modern technology. But the lack of any wreckage, any debris, any survivors or bodies allowed the Cyclops' disappearance to be folded into Bermuda Triangle mythology. Here was a massive ship with over 300 people vanishing completely, just like Flight 19 would decades later. Another famous case involves the Carroll A. Deering, a 5-masted commercial schooner found run aground on the Outer Banks of North Carolina in January 1921. What made the Deering fascinating wasn't just that it went aground. That happened relatively often with sailing vessels, but the condition in which it was found. When rescue crews boarded the Deering, they found a ghost ship. The crew of 11 men was gone. The ship's logbook, navigation equipment, and personal belongings of the crew were missing. The ship's lifeboats were gone. but food was still in the galley, cooking as if a meal had been in preparation. The ship's cat was found alive aboard. There was no sign of struggle or violence. The crew had simply left. Investigation revealed that the Deering had been behaving strangely before running aground. Days earlier, a lightship keeper had reported that a crewman on the Deering had shouted to him that the ship had lost its anchors. But the crewman who shouted this wasn't wearing officer's clothing, suggesting some breakdown in the ship's normal hierarchy. The case of the Carol A. Deering was investigated extensively at the time, and several explanations emerged. Piracy was considered. This was during the Prohibition era, and rum runners and pirates operated along the coast. Mutiny was another possibility. The captain and first mate had reportedly clashed during the voyage. The crew might have mutinied, set the captain adrift, and then themselves abandoned ship when they realized the ship was heading for shoals. Modern analysis suggests the most likely explanation involves a combination of factors. The ship may have been caught in a strong storm that damaged it and swept some crew members overboard. The remaining crew, seeing the ship was doomed and heading for shoals, may have abandoned ship in the lifeboats, taking the navigation equipment and personal items with them. The lifeboats were never found, suggesting they didn't survive the storm either. But the mystery of the Deering, like the Cyclops and Flight 19, became part of triangle mythology. A ship found abandoned but intact, crew vanished without clear explanation, no satisfying resolution to what happened. It fit the pattern of mysterious disappearances that the triangle was becoming known for. These three cases, Flight 19, the USS Cyclops, and the Carol A. Deering, form the core of Bermuda Triangle legend, but they're not the only disappearances cited. Over the years, dozens of other incidents have been added to the list. Private planes that vanished on clear days, cargo ships that sent no distress signals before disappearing, pleasure craft that left port and never arrived at their destinations. What's interesting is how these cases are presented in Bermuda Triangle literature compared to official records. Take the case of the Marine Sulphur Queen, a tanker that vanished in February 1963. Triangle literature presents this as a mysterious disappearance where an entire ship and its 39-man crew vanished without trace. Official investigations revealed that the ship was in poor condition, had structural problems, and was carrying a dangerous cargo of molten sulfur. A Coast Guard investigation concluded the ship likely suffered structural failure and sank rapidly. Or consider the case of the Douglas DC-3, which disappeared in December 1948 while flying from San Juan to Miami. Triangle literature emphasizes that the flight simply vanished with no explanation. Official records show that the pilot reported a problem with the aircraft's electrical system before radio contact was lost, suggesting equipment failure that led to the crash. The pattern repeats across many triangle cases. An incident occurs. Official investigation provides a probable cause involving weather, equipment failure, human error, or structural problems. But triangle literature either omits these explanations or presents them as inadequate to explain the mystery. This isn't to say that all triangle disappearances have satisfying explanations. Some genuinely remain mysterious even after investigation. The ocean is vast, wreckage can be hard to find, and not every incident leaves clear evidence of what went wrong. But the question isn't whether unexplained disappearances occur in the triangle. They do. The question is whether they occur at a rate significantly higher than in other comparable ocean regions. We'll explore that question more in later chapters. What these famous cases accomplished was creating a narrative framework. Each new disappearance could be added to the list, building a sense of pattern and accumulation. The triangle wasn't just a place where one or two unusual things happened. It was a region where things kept happening over and over, suggesting some persistent cause rather than random chance. And this brings us to how these stories were told, how they spread, and how they transformed from isolated tragic incidents into a coherent mystery that would capture worldwide attention. Because the Bermuda Triangle, as we know it, wasn't born from the incidents themselves. It was born from how those incidents were compiled, interpreted, and presented to the public. That's where our journey takes us next. Imagine you're in a bookstore in 1974, browsing the shelves, and you come across a book with a striking cover. The title reads The Bermuda Triangle, and the author is Charles Berlitz. The cover art shows a ship or plane vanishing into mysterious waters. The back cover promises to reveal the truth about one of the world's greatest mysteries, citing dozens of disappearances that defy explanation. You pick it up, flip through pages describing lost ships, vanished aircraft, strange phenomena, and mysterious forces. For $1.95, you can take home a bestseller that will keep you up reading late into the night. That book, Charles Berlitz's The Bermuda Triangle, published in 1974, was a cultural phenomenon. It sold over 5 million copies in the first 2 years. It was translated into dozens of languages. It spawned countless imitators, TV documentaries, movies, and cemented the Bermuda Triangle in popular consciousness as one of the world's great mysteries. But here's the thing. The book was also remarkably inaccurate. Berlitz wasn't a scientist or an investigator. He was a language teacher and writer who had previously written about Atlantis and other unexplained phenomena. His research methodology involved compiling existing stories, often without verifying the facts or consulting official records. Let's look at how Berlitz presented some of the cases we discussed earlier. In his account of Flight 19, Berlitz emphasized the mysterious aspects. The pilot's statement that things looked strange, the disappearance of the search plane, the lack of wreckage. But he omitted or minimized crucial details from the official investigation. He didn't mention that Lieutenant Taylor had a history of getting lost while flying, having been lost on a previous flight and needing to be talked back to base. He didn't clearly explain that Taylor's compasses were likely working fine, but that Taylor had become disoriented and misidentified his location. Berlitz wrote that Flight 19 vanished without a trace, but this phrase is misleading. Aircraft that ditch at sea and sink leave no visible trace on the surface after a short time, especially in rough weather. This is normal, not mysterious. The ocean is enormous, deep, and very good at hiding things. A failed search doesn't mean supernatural disappearance. It means the ocean is vast and searches are difficult. For the USS Cyclops, Berlitz presented the disappearance as utterly inexplicable, ignoring naval investigators' conclusions about possible structural failure and the ship's known mechanical problems. He didn't mention that the Cyclops had a sister ship, the Proteus, that also disappeared in the same general region in 1941 under similar circumstances involving heavy cargo loads. The disappearance of both ships suggested a design or operational flaw rather than supernatural forces. Berlitz's book included many other cases, some of which were even more questionably presented. In several instances, investigation revealed that ships he listed as mysteriously vanished had actually been found, just not widely reported. Incidents he placed in the Bermuda Triangle had actually occurred hundreds or thousands of miles away, well outside any reasonable boundary for the region. Disappearances he attributed to mysterious forces had clear documented explanations in official records involving storms, equipment failure, or navigational error. Some vessels he listed as lost had never existed at all. They were fictional ships from novels or completely fabricated incidents. One particularly egregious example involved a ship called the Reifuku Maru, which Berlitz claimed sent a mysterious final message. Danger like dagger now. Come quick. This is dramatic and creepy. It's also completely made up. The actual ship was the Reifuku Maru, and while it did sink in 1925, it was nowhere near the Bermuda Triangle. It went down in the North Atlantic about 1,000 miles away after sending normal distress calls about weather conditions. Despite these problems, or perhaps because of them, Berlitz's book was phenomenally successful. Why? Because it told a story people wanted to hear. The 1970s were a golden age for paranormal and unexplained phenomena in popular culture. UFO sightings were regularly reported. Ancient astronaut theories were gaining traction. Bigfoot was supposedly being filmed in the Pacific Northwest. The Bermuda Triangle fit perfectly into this cultural moment. Berlitz offered explanations for the triangle that ranged from the somewhat plausible to the wildly speculative. He discussed magnetic anomalies that might affect compasses and navigation equipment. He mentioned methane gas eruptions from the sea floor that could potentially sink ships. But he also proposed exotic theories involving UFOs, connections to the lost city of Atlantis, time warps, dimensional portals, and forces from space. These more exotic theories captured imagination but had no scientific support. Berlitz cited no peer-reviewed research, no systematic data analysis, no controlled studies. He compiled stories, presented them as a pattern, and suggested explanations that sounded scientific without actually being science. To many readers unfamiliar with how scientific investigation works, the book seemed credible. It had lots of cases. It referenced real ships and planes. It proposed mechanisms that used scientific-sounding language. It must be revealing something real. The book's success spawned an entire industry. Other authors rushed to publish their own triangle books. Television networks produced documentaries, most of which uncritically repeated Berlitz's claims. Movies like The Bermuda Triangle, 1978, brought the mystery to theaters. The triangle appeared in countless TV shows, comic books, novels, and popular culture references. But as the triangle's fame grew, something else happened: skeptical investigation. Researchers began actually checking Berlitz's claims against official records. Librarians like Lawrence David Cush spent years tracking down the actual facts of cases Berlitz had cited. What Cush found was damning. In 1975, Cush published The Bermuda Triangle Mystery, Solved, which systematically debunked Berlitz's work. For case after case, Cush found that the official records told a different story than Berlitz's version. Disappearances had natural explanations that were omitted or downplayed. Incidents occurred during documented severe weather that Berlitz described as good conditions. Ships and planes described as vanishing without trace had actually sent distress signals or left wreckage. Some mysterious disappearances were simply vessels that were late, not lost. They eventually turned up fine. Cush also did something crucial. He analyzed the disappearance rate in the Bermuda Triangle compared to other ocean regions with similar traffic. He found that when you account for the volume of traffic passing through the triangle, remember, it's one of the most traveled ocean regions in the world, the disappearance rate isn't unusual at all. Ships and planes are lost in waters off Japan at similar rates. The Mediterranean sees comparable losses. The North Atlantic outside the triangle has its own list of missing vessels. This is the statistical reality that triangle mythology glosses over. Millions of ships and aircraft have passed through the triangle over the decades. The overwhelming majority arrive safely. A small number encounter problems due to weather, mechanical failure, human error, or bad luck. This small number, when compiled into a list without context, looks impressive. But when compared to the vast number of safe passages, and when compared to other ocean regions, the triangle looks normal. But here's the fascinating thing. Cush's thorough debunking, while respected in scientific and skeptical communities, didn't kill the Bermuda Triangle legend. The myth had taken on a life of its own. It had entered popular consciousness. People who'd never read Berlitz's book still knew about the Bermuda Triangle. It had become a cultural reference point, something you didn't need to prove. It was just accepted as real. This persistence, despite debunking, tells us something important about how modern myths work. They're not simply about evidence or facts. They're about narrative and meaning. The Bermuda Triangle mystery serves psychological needs. It suggests that the world still has unknown places, mysterious forces, things that science can't explain. In an increasingly mapped and understood world, that's appealing. The myth also demonstrates confirmation bias at scale. Once people believe in the triangle, they interpret new information through that lens. When a ship disappears in the triangle, it confirms the pattern. When a ship safely crosses the triangle, that's unremarkable and doesn't register. The myth becomes self-reinforcing. Media coverage amplified this effect. Television documentaries about the Bermuda Triangle make for more entertaining viewing than documentaries about normal shipping traffic. Mystery deepens is a better headline than ship sank in storm, as ships sometimes do. Entertainment media has no particular obligation to represent statistical reality, only to engage audiences. The internet age has given the triangle new life. Websites repeat the same debunked stories. YouTube videos present the mystery to new generations. Social media allows triangle theories to spread without gatekeepers checking facts. Modern versions of the legend sometimes incorporate new technological anxieties. Satellite malfunctions, GPS failures, mysterious signals, updating the myth for contemporary times while maintaining its core narrative. What's particularly interesting is how the triangle has become a template for similar legends elsewhere. When disappearances occur in other regions, they're sometimes labeled as triangles, explicitly invoking the Bermuda model. The Dragon's Triangle near Japan, the Michigan Triangle over the Great Lakes, even landlocked regions like the Bennington Triangle in Vermont. All borrow the triangle branding established by Berlitz and his predecessors. The birth of the Bermuda Triangle legend demonstrates how modern myths are created. Start with real incidents that have ambiguous or unexplained elements. Compile them into a list, suggesting pattern. Omit or minimize prosaic explanations from official investigations. Propose exotic causes that capture imagination. Present the compilation in accessible popular format. Release at a cultural moment receptive to such mysteries. Add just enough scientific-sounding language to seem credible without actually engaging with scientific methodology. The formula works because it satisfies something in human psychology. We're pattern-seeking creatures who prefer meaningful explanations to random chance. We're drawn to mysteries, to the unexplained, to the possibility that reality contains more than mainstream science acknowledges. The Bermuda Triangle offers all of this in a geographically specific package that's easy to understand and share. And perhaps most fundamentally, the triangle legend persists because it's emotionally satisfying in a way that statistical reality isn't. Ships sometimes sink in storms is true but uninspiring. A mysterious force in a specific ocean region causes ships to vanish without trace is probably false but fascinating. Given a choice between fascinating fiction and mundane fact, human audiences often choose fascination. This doesn't make people stupid or irrational. It makes us human. We're storytelling creatures who understand the world through narrative. The Bermuda Triangle is a powerful narrative, even if it's not a scientifically supported one. Understanding how this legend was born, how it spread, and why it persists helps us understand not just the triangle itself, but how we create meaning from mystery and how popular culture shapes our understanding of reality. Let's step away from legend and mystery for a while and talk about what's actually happening in that stretch of ocean between Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. Because while the supernatural explanations make for entertaining reading, the natural phenomena at work in the Bermuda Triangle are fascinating in their own right, and in some cases, genuinely strange enough that they might have contributed to the legend, without requiring anything paranormal. First, let's talk about the Gulf Stream. This isn't just any ocean current. It's one of the most powerful moving bodies of water on Earth. The Gulf Stream flows through the Bermuda Triangle region at speeds that can reach 4 to 5 miles per hour, which might not sound impressive until you realize we're talking about a river within the ocean that's about 50 miles wide and over 3,000 feet deep in places. It carries more water than all the rivers on Earth combined, moving warm water from the Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean northward along the eastern coast of North America. For ships and aircraft, the Gulf Stream creates several challenges. A ship moving against the current can find its progress slowed dramatically, burning more fuel and taking longer than expected to reach its destination. In the days before accurate current charts and GPS navigation, captains might miscalculate their position based on expected speed, leading to navigation errors. And here's something particularly relevant to disappearances. The Gulf Stream is very effective at moving debris. Wreckage from an aircraft crash or ship sinking can be carried dozens or even hundreds of miles from the actual incident site within days, making searches extremely difficult. Then there's the weather. The Bermuda Triangle sits in a region that's meteorologically complex and sometimes dramatically violent. The area is in the path of hurricanes that form in the Atlantic and Caribbean during hurricane season, roughly June through November. These storms can develop rapidly, intensify quickly, and create conditions that are deadly for aircraft and ships. Before modern weather satellites and forecasting, hurricanes could appear with relatively little warning, catching vessels by surprise. But hurricanes aren't the only weather concern. The Triangle region experiences sudden, localized thunderstorms that can develop in less than an hour. These storms can produce waterspouts, essentially tornadoes over water, that have been documented destroying small boats and creating dangerous flying conditions. Lightning from these storms can damage aircraft electrical systems. Sudden wind changes and downdrafts can challenge pilots, particularly in the era before modern weather radar. There's also a phenomenon called a white squall, which meteorologists don't fully understand even today. These are sudden, violent windstorms that appear from apparently clear skies with little warning. They can generate waves high enough to capsize ships and create wind sheer dangerous to aircraft. Historical accounts describe white squalls striking with such speed that crews had no time to secure their vessels or send distress signals before their ships were overwhelmed. Now let's dive beneath the surface and talk about something that sounds like science fiction but is entirely real: methane hydrate eruptions. The ocean floor in various parts of the world, including some areas of the Bermuda Triangle region, contains methane hydrate, essentially frozen methane gas trapped in ice-like structures in the sediment. Under certain conditions, this methane can be released suddenly in large quantities. When methane bubbles up from the ocean floor, it decreases the density of the water. A ship floating on water depends on that water's buoyancy. If a large enough volume of methane is released under a ship, the water can suddenly become less dense, and the ship can lose buoyancy and sink. This isn't theoretical. Scientists have demonstrated this effect in laboratory conditions, and geological evidence suggests large methane releases have occurred in various ocean regions throughout history. Could this explain some triangle disappearances? Possibly, though the frequency and location of significant methane releases in the Triangle region isn't well documented enough to say definitively. What we do know is that methane release is a real phenomenon that could theoretically sink a ship quickly and dramatically, possibly without warning or time to send a distress signal. The ship would simply drop through the less dense water and sink. Methane release might also affect aircraft, though more indirectly. Large releases could create areas of turbulent air just above the water surface. More speculatively, some researchers have suggested that methane in the atmosphere might affect aircraft engines or even cause explosions, though this is less well supported by evidence. The ocean floor in the Triangle region also features dramatic topography. The Puerto Rico Trench, the deepest part of the Atlantic Ocean, reaches depths of over 28,000 feet, more than 5 miles straight down. Ships or aircraft that sink in such deep waters are extremely difficult to locate even with modern technology. The continental shelf drops off sharply in places, creating areas where the ocean floor plunges from relatively shallow depths to abyssal trenches within short distances. This underwater geography means that wreckage can disappear into depths where recovery or even detection is impractical. Even with modern submersibles and remote-operated vehicles, searching these depths is time-consuming and expensive. In the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, when many famous triangle incidents occurred, the technology simply didn't exist to effectively search deep ocean trenches. Wreckage could be sitting on the ocean floor right now, undiscovered simply because we haven't looked in the right place at the right depth. Then there's the Sargasso Sea, a unique region that overlaps with the Bermuda Triangle. The Sargasso Sea is defined not by land boundaries, but by ocean currents. It's the area of relative calm in the center of the North Atlantic Gyre, where currents circulate around it. This creates a region where sargassum seaweed accumulates in massive floating mats, sometimes stretching for miles. Columbus encountered these seaweed fields and found them unnerving. Early sailors worried that the thick weed would trap their ships, though in reality, the weed isn't dense enough to actually stop a vessel. But the Sargasso Sea has other characteristics that are genuinely unusual. The water is exceptionally clear and deep blue because of low nutrient content. The area is often very calm, with little wind, which could trap sailing vessels in the age before engines. The combination of clear water, thick seaweed, and unusual calm created an otherworldly atmosphere that contributed to sailors' unease about the region. Now let's address magnetic anomalies, one of the more frequently cited explanations for triangle mysteries. The Bermuda Triangle is one of the few places on Earth where, at certain locations and times, compass magnetic north and true geographic north align. Normally, there's a difference called magnetic declination, and navigators must account for this difference when plotting courses. In most of the world, if you point your compass north and follow it, you're actually heading toward magnetic north, which is different from true north. Navigators use charts showing the local magnetic declination to correct for this. But in the Triangle region, at certain times and places, magnetic north and true north are the same. This means the magnetic declination is 0. Why would this cause problems? Because if a navigator is used to making corrections for magnetic declination, and doesn't realize they're in an area where no correction is needed, they might actually introduce navigation errors by correcting for a difference that doesn't exist. Conversely, if they're expecting 0 declination but magnetic conditions have shifted, they might not make necessary corrections. This could lead to being significantly off course without realizing it. However, the magnetic anomaly explanation has limitations. Professional navigators are trained to be aware of magnetic declination variations and to use multiple navigation methods. Modern aircraft use gyroscopic compass systems that aren't affected by magnetic variations. Ships have been successfully navigating the triangle for centuries despite magnetic conditions. So while magnetic anomalies might contribute to navigation challenges, they probably can't explain most disappearances on their own. There's also the human factor in navigation, which becomes particularly relevant in the Triangle. The region contains numerous islands, keys, and shallow reefs, particularly throughout the Bahamas. These create complex navigation challenges, especially at night or in poor visibility. Before GPS and modern navigation systems, determining exact position at sea required careful attention to navigation, taking regular sightings with sextants, and plotting positions on charts. If a navigator made an error, misread an instrument, miscalculated a position, mistook one island for another. The cumulative effect could put a vessel or aircraft far from where they thought they were. Once lost, particularly at night or in bad weather, the situation could deteriorate quickly. This is exactly what appears to have happened with Flight 19, where the flight leader's disorientation led to flying in the wrong direction, away from land rather than toward it. The Bermuda Triangle also sits in a region with complex communication challenges. Radio signals can behave unpredictably over water, affected by atmospheric conditions, solar activity, and the curvature of the Earth. In the 1940s and 50s, radio equipment was less reliable than modern systems. Dead zones where radio communication was difficult or impossible were more common. This means that a vessel or aircraft experiencing trouble might not be able to effectively communicate their situation or position before catastrophe struck. Wave dynamics in the triangle can also be unusual and dangerous. The region can experience rogue waves, massive waves that appear suddenly, towering well above the surrounding sea. These waves, which scientists only recently confirmed exist, can reach heights of 100 feet or more. They're caused by complex interactions of wind, current, and wave patterns, and they're genuinely dangerous to ships. A rogue wave striking a ship could capsize it in seconds, potentially before the crew could react or send a distress call. The combination of the Gulf Stream's powerful current with storm systems can create particularly dangerous wave conditions. Waves moving in one direction can encounter current flowing in another direction, creating steep, chaotic seas that are challenging even for large, modern vessels. Smaller ships or boats can be overwhelmed quickly in such conditions. What's remarkable about all these natural phenomena is that individually, each one is well documented and scientifically understood. Hurricanes exist. Methane release happens. Rogue waves are real. Magnetic declination is measurable. The Gulf Stream's power is undeniable. None of these require supernatural explanations. They're simply features of the ocean and atmosphere that create genuine hazards for navigation. The question isn't whether these phenomena exist or whether they're dangerous. They demonstrably are. The question is whether they occur in the Bermuda Triangle at rates significantly different from other ocean regions with similar traffic, weather patterns, and oceanographic features. And the scientific answer to that question is probably not. The Triangle has hurricanes, but so does the entire Atlantic and Gulf Coast. It has complex currents, but so do other ocean regions. It has deep water, but the Pacific has deeper trenches. It has magnetic anomalies, but these occur at various points around the world. What the Triangle has that's somewhat unusual is the combination of all these factors in one region, combined with extremely high traffic volume. It's one of the most heavily traveled ocean regions in the world, which means more opportunities for incidents to occur. It has complex weather, geography, and oceanography, which creates more potential for dangerous conditions. And it has a location that's been important for shipping and air travel for centuries, meaning historical records document many incidents. This combination creates what statisticians call a selection effect. The Triangle gets attention not because strange things happen more often there, but because the region is well-traveled, well-documented, and has been culturally designated as mysterious. Once designated mysterious, incidents that occur there get more attention and scrutiny than identical incidents occurring elsewhere. The science of the sea in the Bermuda Triangle region is fascinating, genuinely complex, and sometimes surprising. The ocean is a powerful, dynamic system that humans navigate at our own risk, armed with technology and knowledge that's only recently become sophisticated enough to give us reasonable safety. But the science doesn't support the idea that the Triangle is fundamentally different from other ocean regions. It's just ocean doing what ocean does, being beautiful, mysterious, powerful, and occasionally deadly. Let's talk about something that doesn't make for exciting television documentaries or best-selling books, but which explains far more Bermuda Triangle incidents than mysterious forces ever could. Human beings making mistakes in an environment that doesn't forgive them. Because for all our intelligence, technology, and experience, we remain fallible creatures attempting to navigate a medium we didn't evolve for, using instruments that can fail, making decisions based on incomplete information, sometimes while tired, stressed, or overconfident. Navigation before GPS was a genuinely difficult skill requiring training, practice, and constant attention. Consider what a pilot or ship captain had to do to determine their position at sea before satellite navigation. They needed to use a sextant to measure the angle of the sun or stars above the horizon. They needed accurate tables showing celestial positions at different times. They needed a chronometer showing precise time. They needed to account for their speed and direction since the last known position. They needed to consider currents and winds that might have pushed them off course. Each of these steps involved opportunities for error. Misread the sextant by a degree or two, you could be dozens of miles off in your position calculation. Chronometer running fast or slow, position error, miscalculate speed through water. Position error, fail to account for current. You're not where you think you are. These errors could accumulate, and a navigator might not realize they were significantly off course until they failed to sight land when expected, or until they encountered unexpected hazards. The psychological aspects of navigation errors are particularly interesting. Once a navigator forms a belief about where they are, they tend to interpret subsequent information in ways that confirm that belief. This is exactly what appears to have happened with Lieutenant Taylor in Flight 19. He convinced himself that they were over the Gulf of Mexico when they were actually over the Atlantic. Once he'd formed this belief, he interpreted everything he saw through that lens. Islands that should have told him his actual location were instead interpreted as evidence supporting his incorrect belief. This psychological trap is so common among pilots and sailors that it has a name: confirmation bias in navigation. Once you think you know where you are, you unconsciously filter information to support that belief. The way to combat this is through systematic navigation procedures, multiple independent position checks, and questioning your own assumptions. But under stress, when fuel is running low or weather is deteriorating, humans often fall back on intuition rather than systematic checking, and that's when errors compound into catastrophe. Weather forecasting was far less accurate and detailed before satellites and computer modeling. A ship leaving port might have a general forecast for the region, but localized storms could develop with little warning. Pilots might check weather before takeoff, but conditions could change during their flight. This meant that vessels and aircraft could encounter weather far worse than they'd planned for, sometimes in the middle of the ocean, where options for avoiding or escaping the weather were limited. The human response to deteriorating weather often involves mistakes. Pilots might try to fly through bad weather rather than turning back, a decision influenced by schedule pressure, fuel concerns, or simple overconfidence in their ability to handle it. Ship captains might maintain course and speed in worsening seas rather than slowing down or changing course to find calmer water. These decisions make sense to the people making them in the moment, but they can turn manageable situations into disasters. Fatigue plays an enormous role in maritime and aviation accidents. Flying or sailing for hours requires sustained attention, and human attention degrades with fatigue. Reaction times slow. Decision-making becomes impaired. The ability to notice and correct errors decreases. A pilot who's been flying for 4 or 5 hours in challenging conditions is not performing at the same level they were when fresh. Yet schedules, fuel limitations, and the nature of ocean crossing meant that pilots and crews often operated while fatigued. Equipment failure is another prosaic but significant factor. Aircraft engines fail, ship machinery breaks down, radio equipment stops working. Navigation instruments malfunction. Modern vessels have redundant systems specifically because equipment failures are common enough that backup systems are essential. But smaller aircraft and ships, particularly in the historical period when many triangle incidents occurred, might not have had redundancy. A single critical failure could create a situation the crew couldn't recover from. The interesting thing about equipment failure is how it can create mysterious-seeming situations. Consider an aircraft that suffers electrical system failure, loses radio communication, and then crashes into the ocean. From the outside, this looks like an aircraft that simply vanished. It stopped communicating and wasn't found. But the explanation is straightforward equipment failure followed by ditching at sea. No mystery required, but without finding the wreckage or having detailed information about the failure, it gets recorded as an unexplained disappearance. Overconfidence is perhaps the most human factor of all. Experienced pilots and sailors develop confidence in their abilities, which is generally good. You want your pilot or captain to be confident. But overconfidence can lead to taking unnecessary risks, flying in conditions that should be avoided, or assuming that you can handle situations that are actually beyond your capability. The very experience that makes someone confident can also make them complacent. Small aircraft are particularly vulnerable to weather conditions that larger aircraft handle more easily. Light planes can be tossed around by turbulence, forced down by downdrafts, or overwhelmed by icing conditions. Private pilots, especially less experienced ones, might not recognize deteriorating conditions until it's too late to safely return or divert. This creates situations where small aircraft crash in bad weather, and if the crash occurs over open ocean, the aircraft sinks without leaving debris on the surface. Ship stability is another area where human decisions matter enormously. How cargo is loaded and secured affects how a ship handles in rough seas. Overloading a ship or loading it improperly can make it unstable in ways that aren't obvious in calm conditions, but become dangerous in storms. The USS Cyclops was probably overloaded with heavy ore cargo, making it vulnerable to capsizing if the cargo shifted. This was a human decision, loading too much or loading improperly. That created the conditions for disaster. Navigation in the Bahamas and Caribbean presents specific challenges because of the complex geography. Hundreds of islands, keys, and reefs create a maze that requires careful navigation. Many of these features are low-lying and difficult to see from a distance, especially at night. Charts weren't always accurate historically, particularly for more remote areas. A navigator making a small error in position could find themselves running aground on a reef they didn't know was there. The phenomenon of get-homeitis affects pilots and sailors, the psychological pressure to complete a journey despite deteriorating conditions. Maybe you're running behind schedule, maybe you're eager to get home, maybe you've promised to arrive at a certain time. These pressures can lead to continuing a flight or voyage when the safer decision would be to delay, divert, or turn back. Many accidents occur when someone pushes forward into worsening conditions, rather than making the prudent but disappointing decision to stop. Communication failures are often cited as mysterious, but are actually quite common and explainable. Radio equipment in earlier eras was less reliable. Atmospheric conditions affect radio propagation unpredictably. The curvature of the Earth limits line-of-sight radio communication. Dead zones exist where radio signals don't reliably reach. An aircraft or ship in distress might try to send a distress call that's never received simply because of the limitations of radio communication in that era. There's also the issue of sudden catastrophic failures. An aircraft that suffers structural failure at altitude, perhaps due to metal fatigue or storm damage, might break apart so quickly that the crew has no time to send a distress call. The wreckage scatters over a wide area and sinks, From the outside, this looks like an aircraft that simply vanished, but the explanation is structural failure leading to catastrophic breakup. No mystery, just tragedy. The ocean's vastness works against finding wreckage, even from well-documented crashes. If you know roughly where an aircraft went down, you have a search area that might be thousands of square miles. The wreckage sinks. Surface debris drifts with currents. Within days, wreckage that might have been found with an immediate search has scattered or sunk beyond easy detection. This is why modern aircraft carry emergency locator transmitters and why ships have satellite tracking. Without these technologies, finding wreckage is extraordinarily difficult. Human nature also includes the tendency to think disasters happen to other people. Pilots and sailors often have what psychologists call optimism bias. They know accidents happen, but don't really believe they'll happen to them. This leads to taking risks that seem acceptable in the moment, but which, when things go wrong, prove to have been unacceptably dangerous. The pilot who flies into deteriorating weather thinks they can handle it. The sailor who doesn't reef sails in time thinks the storm won't be that bad. Usually they're right. When they're wrong, we get accidents. Training and experience matter, but they're not guarantees against disaster. Even highly trained, experienced professionals make mistakes, especially under stress or when facing unusual situations. The pilot with thousands of flight hours can still become disoriented. The captain with decades at sea can still misjudge weather. Experience helps, but it doesn't make anyone infallible. What's particularly relevant to the Bermuda Triangle legend is how human errors and equipment failures create situations that look mysterious from the outside. A ship or plane simply disappears. No distress call. No explanation. No wreckage found. From this information, people conclude something extraordinary must have happened. But often the explanation is a series of ordinary failures and mistakes that cascade into disaster, happening too quickly for the crew to communicate what's wrong, and resulting in wreckage that sinks and isn't found in the vastness of the ocean. The unforgiving nature of the ocean means that mistakes that might be recoverable on land become fatal at sea. Run out of gas in your car, you walk to a gas station. Run out of fuel in an aircraft over the ocean. You ditch and hope someone finds you before you drown or die of exposure. Make a navigation error driving, you might get lost temporarily. Make a navigation error over open ocean. You might fly until your fuel runs out, never finding land, crashing into the sea hundreds of miles from where anyone is looking for you. The Bermuda Triangle isn't special in this regard. Human error and equipment failure cause maritime and aviation accidents worldwide. People make mistakes, technology fails, weather surprises us. These are universal challenges, not unique to the Triangle. What the Triangle has is a legend that makes us look at these ordinary explanations and find them unsatisfying, making us search for extraordinary explanations when ordinary ones suffice. Understanding human error and the ocean's unforgiving nature doesn't diminish the tragedy of disappearances. If anything, it makes them more poignant. These weren't mysterious supernatural events. They were human beings doing their best with the knowledge and technology they had, making decisions that seemed reasonable at the time, encountering situations they couldn't overcome. That's not mystery. That's the human condition, playing out against the backdrop of an ocean that doesn't care about our stories or our intentions, that simply exists with its currents and weather and depths, neutral and indifferent to whether we successfully navigate it or not. Let's do something that Bermuda Triangle books rarely do. Let's talk about statistics. Not the dramatic compilation of incidents, but the actual mathematical analysis of whether disappearances in the Triangle occur at unusual rates. Because here's the thing about human brains, we're not naturally good at statistical thinking. We're excellent at seeing patterns even when they're not there. We're great at remembering dramatic incidents and forgetting routine ones, and we're really bad at understanding probability and randomness. First, let's establish some context. How much traffic actually passes through the Bermuda Triangle? This region includes some of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. The Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean are major commerce centers. Cruise ships carry millions of passengers through these waters each year. Cargo ships transport goods between North and South America, between the Americas and Europe. Pleasure craft are everywhere in this region, from small sailboats to large yachts. And overhead, aircraft routes between the eastern United States and the Caribbean, South America and Europe cross this airspace constantly. Quantifying this traffic precisely is difficult because the triangle has no official boundaries and traffic monitoring has changed over time. But conservative estimates suggest that thousands of vessels and aircraft pass through the triangle region every week. Over a year, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of trips. Over decades, millions of successful transits. This creates an enormous denominator in our statistical calculation. Now let's talk about the numerator, actual incidents. How many ships and aircraft have disappeared in the triangle? This is where things get tricky, because the answer depends on how you define disappeared, what time period you're examining, and how rigorous you are about verification. Charles Berlitz's book claimed over 100 disappearances, but as investigators like Lawrence David Cush demonstrated, many of these claims don't hold up to scrutiny. When you restrict the list to verified disappearances, vessels and aircraft that genuinely went missing with no adequate explanation, and you properly attribute them to the Triangle region rather than incidents that occurred elsewhere, the number drops dramatically. Some careful analyses suggest perhaps 20 to 50 genuinely unexplained disappearances over the past century, depending on how strictly you define unexplained. But here's the critical question. Is this number unusual? To answer that, we need to compare it to other ocean regions with similar characteristics. Let's look at some comparisons. The North Atlantic shipping lanes outside the Triangle have seen numerous disappearances over the same time period. The Mediterranean Sea has lost ships and aircraft. The waters around Japan, another heavily trafficked region, have their own list of missing vessels. The Pacific Ocean has vast areas where ships and planes have vanished. When you look at disappearance rates adjusted for traffic volume, the Bermuda Triangle doesn't stand out as statistically unusual. Lloyd's of London, the famous insurance market that insures ships and cargo worldwide, has stated that the Bermuda Triangle is not a particularly dangerous area. They don't charge higher premiums for vessels transiting the triangle. Insurance companies are intensely interested in actual risk because it affects their profits. If the triangle were genuinely more dangerous, insurers would account for this in their pricing. The fact that they don't suggests that their data shows normal risk levels. The U.S. Coast Guard, which maintains records of maritime incidents and conducts search and rescue operations, has also stated that they don't consider the Bermuda Triangle to have an unusual number of incidents. In an official statement, the Coast Guard noted that they don't recognize the Triangle as a particularly dangerous area, and that the number of incidents is proportional to the amount of traffic passing through. Let's think about this statistically. Imagine you have a region that sees 100,000 transits per year, a conservative estimate for the Triangle. Now imagine that 0.01% of those transits result in incidents. 1 in every 10,000 trips. That would be 10 incidents per year, or 100 incidents over 10 years. But here's the thing, this rate of incidents wouldn't be mysterious or unusual. It would simply be the expected result of probability, working on a large number of events in a challenging environment. Aircraft statistics are similar. Millions of flights pass through the Triangle airspace annually. If even a tiny fraction experience problems, you'll accumulate a list of incidents that looks impressive when compiled. But when you calculate the rate, incidents per flight hour or per million flights, the Triangle doesn't show elevated risk. There's also the issue of temporal clustering. Some triangle disappearances occurred in clusters, several incidents in a relatively short period. This can make the pattern seem meaningful, but probability tells us that random events often cluster. If you flip a coin 1,000 times, you'll get streaks where you get heads 5 or 6 times in a row, even though each flip is independent. Clusters don't prove a pattern. They're what we expect from randomness. The absence of wreckage, often cited as mysterious, is actually statistically normal for ocean incidents. Research on aircraft that crash into the ocean shows that in many cases, wreckage is never recovered. The ocean is vast, deep, and effective at hiding things. Currents disperse debris. Aircraft and small vessels sink quickly. Unless the crash site is known within a fairly small search radius, and unless the search begins quickly, the chances of finding wreckage decrease rapidly. This isn't mysterious. It's just the reality of how difficult ocean searches are. Let's also consider reporting bias. Incidents in the Bermuda Triangle receive more media attention because of the triangle's reputation. A ship going missing in the triangle might make international news. An identical incident in the Indian Ocean might receive local coverage only. This creates the perception that triangle incidents are more common simply because we hear about them more often. Availability bias. The human tendency to judge probability based on how easily we can recall examples makes us overestimate triangle incident rates. There's also the issue of what counts as a triangle incident. Some compilations include vessels that were headed toward the triangle but disappeared before entering it. Others include incidents that occurred hundreds of miles outside any reasonable triangle boundary. Some include ships that were simply overdue and later turned up fine. When you tighten the criteria to include only genuine disappearances within the defined region, the list shrinks considerably. Historical data also shows changing patterns over time. Early compiled lists of triangle incidents include many cases from the 19th and early 20th centuries, when ships were less safe, navigation was less accurate, and weather forecasting barely existed. But as technology improved, incident rates declined. Modern vessels with satellite communication, GPS navigation, weather radar, and improved safety equipment have much better safety records. If the triangle were being affected by some mysterious force, you'd expect incident rates to remain constant or even increase with more traffic. Instead, they've declined as expected with improving technology and safety practices. Statistical analysis also reveals something interesting about the types of incidents attributed to the triangle. Many involve small private aircraft and pleasure craft, vessels that are genuinely more vulnerable to weather and equipment problems than commercial aircraft and ships. Large commercial vessels and aircraft rarely disappear in the triangle, which is exactly what you'd expect if the causes were natural phenomena that affect small craft more than large, well-equipped vessels. Another statistical consideration: the specificity of the triangle's boundaries. Why would a mysterious force affect only the area between Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico? Why not a circle or an irregular shape determined by geological features? The triangle shape is arbitrary, defined by humans connecting 3 points. Nature doesn't usually work in geometric shapes defined by human geography. The very specificity of the boundaries suggests cultural construction rather than natural phenomenon. Probability also works against conspiracy theories about the triangle. The more people who would need to be involved in covering up triangle mysteries, the less likely the conspiracy becomes. Thousands of Coast Guard personnel, Navy sailors, commercial pilots, ship captains, insurance investigators, and maritime lawyers would need to maintain silence about systematic unusual occurrences. The probability of such a conspiracy remaining secret is essentially zero. Let's consider a thought experiment. Imagine we chose a different arbitrary triangle, say, connecting Los Angeles, Hawaii, and Seattle. If we compiled every ship and aircraft that disappeared in this Pacific Triangle over the past century, we'd have a substantial list. We could write a book about the Pacific Triangle mystery, highlighting strange cases and mysterious circumstances. But we don't do this because we haven't culturally designated this region as mysterious. The incidents there are just normal maritime and aviation accidents. The only difference between this hypothetical Pacific Triangle and the Bermuda Triangle is the legend, not the statistics. Statistical literacy requires understanding that random events will produce patterns. If you flip a coin 100 times, you'll get sequences that look meaningful. 5 heads in a row, 10 tails out of 12 flips. But these patterns don't mean the coin is biased or that mysterious forces are at work. They're simply what randomness looks like. Similarly, clusters of disappearances in a heavily trafficked ocean region don't prove mysterious forces. They're what we expect from probability. The mathematical reality is that the Bermuda Triangle is statistically ordinary. When you account for traffic volume, adjust for the challenges of the ocean environment, compare rates to other regions, and eliminate cases that are explained or misattributed, the triangle disappears as a statistical anomaly. It's not safer than other oceans, but it's not meaningfully more dangerous either. It's just ocean, with all the ordinary risks that ocean travel entails. This doesn't mean every incident has been perfectly explained. Some disappearances remain genuinely mysterious in the sense that we don't know exactly what happened. But we don't know what happened isn't the same as something supernatural happened. It just means we lack sufficient information to determine the cause, which is unsurprising given the challenges of investigating incidents at sea where wreckage isn't recovered and there are no survivors to interview. The numbers tell a clear story. The Bermuda Triangle legend is built on selective attention, confirmation bias, and insufficient statistical analysis. When you do the math properly, the mystery evaporates. What remains is the human tendency to see patterns in randomness, to prefer exotic explanations over mundane ones, and to believe compelling stories even when the data doesn't support them. The real mystery isn't why ships and planes disappear in the triangle. It's why we believed they disappeared at unusual rates when the statistics never supported that conclusion. The Bermuda Triangle became so famous, so embedded in popular culture, that it created a template. And human beings, being pattern-seeking creatures who love a good mystery, found other triangles around the world. Some of these have genuine traditions predating the Bermuda Triangle legend. Others were clearly created in imitation, deliberately invoking the triangle brand to market their own regional mysteries. Let's explore these parallel phenomena, because they tell us as much about human psychology as they do about the places themselves. The most famous of these other triangles is the Dragon's Triangle, also called the Devil's Sea or Mono Yumi in Japanese. This region roughly stretches from southern Japan to a point east of the Philippines, then northeast toward the Bonin Islands and back to Japan. Like the Bermuda Triangle, the Dragon's Triangle has a reputation for mysterious disappearances of ships and aircraft. Some accounts claim that the Japanese government once designated it as a danger zone. The Dragon's Triangle legend predates the Bermuda Triangle by centuries in Japanese folklore. Stories of ships and crews vanishing in these waters go back to ancient times. Dragons were said to rise from the depths to pull vessels under. Strange lights and phenomena were reported by sailors. The region was considered cursed or haunted in traditional belief. But here's what modern investigation reveals. The Dragon's Triangle sits in an area with very real natural hazards. The region is volcanically active, with underwater volcanoes that occasionally surface as new islands and then sink again. Seismic activity is common. The area is in the path of Pacific typhoons, which can be devastating to shipping. Strong currents flow through the region, and yes, ships have disappeared there. But when you examine the cases, Most have prosaic explanations involving storms, volcanic activity, or navigational error. The claim that the Japanese government designated it as a danger zone appears to be exaggerated or fabricated. The Japanese Coast Guard hasn't issued any special warnings beyond normal navigational cautions about seismic activity and weather. Like the Bermuda Triangle, the Dragon's Triangle's reputation exceeds its actual statistical danger. What's interesting is how the Dragon's Triangle story spread. After the Bermuda Triangle became famous in the West, Japanese researchers and writers began drawing explicit parallels, sometimes calling it the Bermuda Triangle of the Pacific. This cross-pollination of legend demonstrates how mysteries can be culturally transmitted and adapted. The Dragon's Triangle had its own traditional stories, but the modern legend was shaped by and marketed in relation to the Bermuda Triangle. Closer to home, there's the Michigan Triangle on Lake Michigan. This triangle connects Manitowoc, Wisconsin to Ludington, Michigan, and southward to Benton Harbor, Michigan. Within this region, several aircraft and ships have disappeared, and there are reports of unusual phenomena including strange lights, UFO sightings, and mysterious fogs. The most famous incident in the Michigan Triangle is the disappearance of Northwest Airlines Flight 2501 in June 1950. The DC-4 aircraft, carrying 58 people, vanished over Lake Michigan during a night flight from New York to Minneapolis. Despite extensive searches, only small pieces of debris were ever recovered, and the main wreckage has never been found. But here's the reality. Lake Michigan is deep, cold, and surprisingly treacherous. Sudden storms can develop rapidly. The lake's depth makes finding wreckage difficult. It's over 900 feet deep in places. The disappearance of Flight 2501 is certainly tragic, and the failure to find the main wreckage is frustrating. But it's explainable through known factors. The aircraft likely encountered severe weather, crashed into the lake at night, and sank to a depth where mid-20th century search technology couldn't locate it. Other Michigan Triangle incidents similarly have natural explanations when examined closely. Ships disappearing in Lake Michigan storms, small aircraft crashing in poor weather, incidents that might seem mysterious until you account for the lake's genuine hazards. The triangle designation came later, explicitly modeled on the Bermuda Triangle, creating a framework for interpreting various incidents as a pattern. Then there's the Nevada Triangle, a region of mountainous terrain in Nevada and California where numerous aircraft have disappeared. Some estimates claim as many as 2,000 planes have gone missing in this area over the past several decades. The region includes high mountains, unpredictable weather, and challenging terrain. But calling this the Nevada Triangle and suggesting mystery is misleading. Mountain flying is inherently more dangerous than flying over flat terrain. Weather in mountains can change rapidly and dramatically. Downdrafts can force aircraft into terrain. The rugged landscape means that crashed aircraft can be incredibly difficult to locate even when search areas are relatively small. Wreckage might sit in remote canyons or on mountainsides, undetected for years or decades. The high number of incidents in the Nevada Triangle reflects the challenging flying environment and the volume of air traffic in the region, not mysterious forces. The area includes popular flying routes and numerous small airports. General aviation aircraft, which are more vulnerable to weather and terrain challenges than commercial aircraft, are common in the region. The statistics aren't unusual when you account for these factors. Even more removed from ocean mysteries is the Bennington Triangle in Vermont, which we touched on briefly when discussing disappearances. This landlocked region around Glastonbury Mountain has been associated with several disappearances between 1945 and 1950. Unlike the maritime triangles, this region's reputation is built on relatively few cases, perhaps 5 or 6 disappearances depending on how you count. The Bennington Triangle shows how the triangle framework can be applied to almost any region where disappearances occur. The cases that define it are genuinely mysterious and tragic, but connecting them through geographical boundary and suggesting a pattern is interpretive. Disappearances occur in wilderness areas worldwide. Vermont's forests are dense, and the terrain can be challenging, creating conditions where search and rescue operations might not find lost hikers or accident victims. What these parallel triangles reveal is how the triangle framework has become a cultural template for organizing and interpreting disappearances. The geographical triangle shape isn't necessary. You could draw a circle, square, or irregular boundary and connect the same incidents. But triangle has become synonymous with mystery, largely because of the Bermuda Triangle's cultural success. New mystery regions invoke the triangle specifically to borrow that cultural resonance. Some of these regions have genuine hazards that explain elevated incident rates. The Dragon's Triangle has volcanic and seismic activity. The Michigan Triangle covers a large, deep lake with unpredictable weather. The Nevada Triangle includes challenging mountain terrain. But other regions with similar hazards, but no triangle designation, don't receive the same attention or generate the same legends. This demonstrates something important about how modern myths work. They need a brand. Ships sometimes disappear near Japan due to volcanic activity and typhoons is factual but unexciting. The Dragon's Triangle, Asia's Bermuda Triangle, is marketable. The triangle framework provides instant recognition and implied meaning. It suggests pattern, mystery, and significance beyond ordinary accidents or disappearances. The multiplication of triangles also reveals market forces at work in mystery culture. Authors, documentarians, and content creators need new material. Once the Bermuda Triangle had been thoroughly covered, other triangles provided fresh content while capitalizing on established interest. Each new triangle could be marketed as the next Bermuda Triangle, or even more mysterious than the Bermuda Triangle. Tourism has also played a role in perpetuating and creating triangle legends. Regions designated as mysterious triangles can become tourist destinations. Bermuda itself has partially embraced its triangle association, knowing that mystery adds appeal for some visitors. Gift shops sell triangle-themed merchandise to mention the legend, even while explaining the scientific reality. The mystery becomes economically valuable regardless of its factual basis. What's perhaps most revealing is that no one has created triangles in regions with genuinely unusual statistical anomalies for disappearances. If we were simply mapping actual danger zones, we might create triangles around areas with the worst weather, the most treacherous waters, or the highest concentration of navigational hazards. But that's not how triangles are created. They're created by cultural designation, not by objective measurement of risk. These parallel mysteries ultimately reinforce a central point about the Bermuda Triangle itself. The triangle framework is a way of organizing and interpreting data, not a discovery of underlying reality. You can create a triangle almost anywhere, compile incidents within it, emphasize mysterious aspects while downplaying explained cases, and voila, you have a new mystery. The fact that this can be done repeatedly demonstrates that the methodology doesn't identify genuine anomalies. It creates the appearance of patterns through selective attention and framing. There's something reassuring about technology. It feels like it should give us answers, solve mysteries, turn the unknown into the known. And in many ways, modern technology has transformed our relationship with the ocean and with mysteries like the Bermuda Triangle. Satellite tracking, GPS navigation, advanced weather forecasting, sophisticated search equipment. All of these have changed how we understand and navigate the region that once seemed so mysterious. Let's explore how technology has illuminated what was once shadowed in legend. The most transformative technology for ocean travel has been GPS, the Global Positioning System. Before GPS became widely available in the 1990s, determining your exact position at sea required skill, attention, and multiple navigation methods. With GPS, anyone with a receiver knows their position within meters, anywhere on Earth, at any time, in any weather. This has virtually eliminated the navigation errors that contributed to historical disappearances. Think about Flight 19 and how different that situation would be with GPS. Lieutenant Taylor's disorientation and navigation errors would have been immediately obvious. The flight's position would have been continuously known both to the pilots and to ground control. Even if the aircraft still ran out of fuel and ditched, rescuers would have known exactly where to search. GPS doesn't prevent all accidents, but it eliminates a major category of problems that plagued earlier navigation. Modern aircraft also carry emergency locator transmitters, ELTs, that automatically activate upon crash impact, sending distress signals on specific frequencies that search and rescue teams monitor. Ships carry emergency position indicating radio beacons, EPIRBs, that serve similar functions. When activated, these devices send signals to satellites, which relay the vessel's position to rescue coordination centers. This means that even when crews can't manually send distress calls, the emergency signal goes out automatically. The difference this makes is dramatic. In the past, a ship or aircraft in distress might sink before sending a distress call, or the crew might be unable to communicate their position before catastrophe struck. Now, even in the worst-case scenarios, emergency beacons provide search teams with precise locations. This doesn't prevent all losses, but it makes finding wreckage and survivors far more likely. Weather forecasting has also improved exponentially. Satellites monitor weather systems globally and continuously. Computer models predict storm development and movement with increasing accuracy. Pilots and ship captains have access to detailed weather information before and during their journeys. Hurricanes that might have caught vessels by surprise in the 1940s are now tracked for days before they reach shipping lanes, allowing vessels to alter course or remain in port. Modern weather radar allows pilots to see and avoid dangerous weather in real time. Ships can see storm systems developing and make decisions about routing to avoid the worst conditions. This doesn't eliminate weather as a hazard. Storms are still dangerous even when you know they're coming. But it removes the element of surprise that contributed to many historical incidents. Communication technology has similarly advanced. Modern ships and aircraft have multiple redundant communication systems. Satellite phones work anywhere on Earth. Radio communication is more reliable and covers greater distances. Even in emergencies, crews have multiple methods of calling for help. The communication failures that contributed to historical triangle mysteries are far less likely with current technology. Search and rescue capabilities have improved dramatically as well. When an incident occurs, rescue coordination centers can quickly mobilize aircraft and ships equipped with sophisticated search equipment. Satellites can detect emergency beacons. Aircraft carry infrared sensors that can detect people in water at night. Ships have rescue equipment and trained crews. The vast search areas that made historical searches so difficult can now be covered more quickly and thoroughly. Oceanographic research has also advanced our understanding of the Triangle region. Scientists have mapped the ocean floor in detail using sonar and other technologies. We understand the underwater topography, the currents, and the geological features far better than we did decades ago. This knowledge helps explain historical incidents and reduces mystery. For example, methane hydrate deposits on the ocean floor, which we discussed earlier, have been mapped and studied. Scientists understand the conditions under which these deposits might release gas and the potential effects on ships. while large-scale methane releases capable of sinking ships are probably rare. We now understand the phenomenon well enough to evaluate whether it might explain specific historical cases. Deep-sea exploration technology has made it possible to search at depths that were completely inaccessible in earlier eras. Remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, can explore the ocean floor miles below the surface. Side-scan sonar can survey large areas of the sea floor relatively quickly. While searching the deep ocean remains challenging and expensive, it's now possible in ways it simply wasn't when many triangle incidents occurred. Some triangle mysteries have been directly impacted by this technology. Wreckage that might have remained lost forever has been found using modern search equipment. Cases that once seemed inexplicable have been explained when wreckage was located and examined. The technology doesn't solve all mysteries, but it has resolved some that seemed permanently enigmatic. Interestingly, the improvement in safety and the reduction in mysterious disappearances hasn't significantly affected the triangle legend. Even though modern vessels equipped with current technology rarely experience the types of mysterious disappearances that built the triangle's reputation, the legend persists based on historical cases. This demonstrates how legends can become independent of the realities that created them. Statistical tracking has also improved. Organizations like Lloyd's of London, the International Maritime Organization, and National Coast Guards maintain detailed databases of maritime incidents. Aircraft accidents are thoroughly investigated and documented by agencies like the FAA and NTSB. This data allows proper statistical analysis, comparing incident rates across different regions and time periods. This comprehensive data confirms what skeptical investigators suggested decades ago. The Bermuda Triangle doesn't have unusual incident rates compared to other heavily trafficked ocean regions. When you analyze the data systematically, accounting for traffic volume and using proper statistical methods, the triangle isn't statistically anomalous. The mystery was created by selective attention and poor statistical methodology, not by genuine elevated risk. Satellite imagery has also been valuable for investigating triangle claims. When unusual phenomena are reported, strange lights, mysterious formations, unusual water conditions, satellites can sometimes provide imagery that helps explain what was observed. Many mysterious sightings turn out to have prosaic explanations when examined with modern imagery and analysis tools. The internet era has been a mixed blessing for triangle mysteries. On one hand, information is more accessible than ever. Official investigation reports, statistical data, scientific research, and skeptical analysis are available to anyone interested. Debunking information spreads alongside mystery claims. On the other hand, the internet also allows unsupported claims to spread rapidly, and mysterious triangle content continues to find audiences despite being repeatedly debunked. Social media has created new ways for triangle legends to propagate. Viral videos claiming to show triangle phenomena can reach millions of people before debunking catches up. Algorithms that prioritize engaging content often favor mysterious or sensational claims over accurate but less exciting scientific explanations. The triangle continues to thrive online despite lacking evidentiary support. What's perhaps most significant about modern technology's impact on the triangle is what hasn't happened. If the triangle were actually affected by some persistent mysterious force, electromagnetic anomalies, dimensional portals, alien activity, or whatever exotic explanation you prefer, we'd expect modern technology to detect it. Satellites monitor the region continuously. Ships and aircraft equipped with sophisticated sensors pass through constantly. Oceanographic research studies the waters and sea floor. Yet no persistent anomaly has been detected. No unusual electromagnetic readings, no gravitational anomalies, no unexplained energy signatures. The triangle looks, to every instrument we point at it, like normal ocean. This absence of evidence is itself evidence. Evidence that the exotic explanations proposed for triangle mysteries aren't supported by objective measurement. Modern technology has essentially solved the Bermuda Triangle mystery, not by explaining every historical incident, which would be impossible without sufficient evidence from each case, but by demonstrating that the triangle isn't exceptional. It has normal incident rates for a heavily trafficked ocean region. It has natural hazards that are well understood and accounted for in navigation and safety planning. And modern vessels transiting the region with current technology experience normal, low levels of risk. The few incidents that still occur in the region, and they do occur because ocean travel is never completely safe, are investigated thoroughly using modern technology. Wreckage is often found, causes are often determined. These modern cases don't generally become part of triangle mythology because they lack the mystery that fed earlier legends. When you know what happened, when you can explain an incident through normal causes, it doesn't feel mysterious enough to add to the legend. This creates an interesting situation where the Bermuda Triangle legend is effectively frozen in time, built on historical cases from an era before modern technology, perpetually referring back to disappearances that occurred when navigation was less precise, communication was less reliable, and searches were less effective. The legend exists in amber, preserved from a time when mystery was more possible because information was less complete. Technology hasn't made the ocean completely safe. Vessels still sink, aircraft still crash, storms still kill, but technology has removed much of the mystery from these tragedies. We usually know what happened. We can usually find wreckage. We can usually explain incidents through normal causes. And in doing so, technology has quietly dismantled the factual basis for Bermuda Triangle mythology, even as the legend continues in popular culture, immune to the evidence that should have dissolved it decades ago. The Bermuda Triangle has transcended its origins as a regional mystery to become a global cultural phenomenon, a symbol that represents far more than a simple geographic area. It's been featured in countless books, movies, television shows, songs, video games, and internet content. It's become shorthand for mystery itself, a reference point that needs no explanation. Let's explore how the triangle has woven itself into the fabric of popular culture, and what that tells us about ourselves. The triangle's journey into popular culture really accelerated in the 1970s, that golden age of paranormal fascination we've mentioned before. Charles Berlitz's book was just the beginning. Television documentaries proliferated, often with titles like In Search of the Bermuda Triangle or Secrets of the Bermuda Triangle. These programs typically featured dramatic narration, ominous music, interviews with believers, and impressive graphics showing ships and planes vanishing into mysterious waters. These documentaries followed a formula that became standard for paranormal programming. Start with the mysterious incidents. Interview people claiming unusual experiences or supporting mysterious explanations. Present scientific skepticism briefly, if at all, and frame it as close-minded or incomplete. End with the suggestion that the mystery remains unsolved, that something extraordinary might be happening. This format entertained audiences while creating the impression of balanced investigation, even when it wasn't. Hollywood embraced the triangle enthusiastically. Films like The Bermuda Triangle, 1978, and Beyond the Bermuda Triangle, 1975, brought triangle mysteries to theaters. These weren't generally high-budget productions, but they capitalized on public interest and contributed to keeping the triangle in popular consciousness. Later films would reference the triangle more casually, using it as a plot device or quick explanation for mysterious disappearances. Science fiction has been particularly fond of the triangle. It's been used to explain everything from alien abductions to time travel portals to doorways to other dimensions. In these stories, the triangle becomes a convenient mechanism for moving characters into extraordinary situations. Need your protagonists transported to another time period? Have them fly through the Bermuda Triangle. Need an explanation for missing ships? The triangle provides instant, mysterious context. Television shows across all genres have referenced the triangle. The X-Files explored triangle mysteries in multiple episodes, treating it as potentially connected to paranormal phenomena. Lost, while not specifically set in the triangle, clearly drew on triangle mythology with its mysterious island, plane crash, and temporal anomalies. Even comedies have referenced the triangle, often playing its mysterious reputation for laughs. Children's programming hasn't been immune either. Cartoons from Scooby-Doo to SpongeBob SquarePants have done triangle episodes, usually treating it as a place of mystery and adventure rather than danger. These portrayals introduce triangle mythology to children, ensuring that new generations encounter the legend even as the original mystery has been thoroughly debunked. Video games have used the triangle as a setting or plot element. Adventure games send players to investigate triangle mysteries. Strategy games include triangle regions with special properties or hazards. The triangle's cultural resonance makes it useful shorthand for mysterious ocean region in game narratives. Music has also been influenced by triangle mythology. Songs have been written about triangle mysteries, ranging from serious explorations to humorous takes. The triangle appears in lyrics as a metaphor for disappearance, mystery, or danger. It's become part of the broader cultural vocabulary that artists can reference with confidence that audiences will understand. The internet era has given the triangle new life through different media. YouTube is full of triangle content, from documentaries to conspiracy theories to scientific explanations. Some of this content is well-researched and accurate. Much of it perpetuates myths and inaccuracies. The triangle generates clicks, views, and engagement, making it attractive content for creators regardless of factual accuracy. Social media has created new ways for triangle legends to spread. Memes reference the triangle. Viral posts claim to reveal triangle secrets. The legend adapts to new platforms, maintaining relevance across changing media landscapes. The triangle has proven remarkably resilient, capable of reinventing itself for each new generation and medium. Tourism to the region has capitalized on triangle mystique. Bermuda, while not directly associated with most triangle incidents, has embraced aspects of the legend. Gift shops sell triangle-themed merchandise. Tour operators mention the triangle, often with a knowing wink that acknowledges both the legend and its debunking. The mystery adds a layer of interest to the region, even for tourists who don't genuinely believe in supernatural explanations. Florida and other triangle-adjacent locations have similarly incorporated triangle references into tourism marketing. Museums include triangle exhibits. Boat tour mention triangle history. The legend has economic value regardless of its factual basis. So regions with no incentive to completely debunk it often preserve it as a local attraction. The triangle has also become a broader cultural metaphor. When things go missing, people joke about them disappearing into the Bermuda Triangle. When situations seem inexplicably complicated, they're compared to Bermuda Triangle mysteries. The phrase has entered common usage as a way to describe any situation where things disappear or become confusing without clear explanation. This metaphorical usage demonstrates how deeply the triangle has penetrated cultural consciousness. Most people using triangle references probably don't genuinely believe in mysterious forces operating in that ocean region. But the reference is useful, immediately understood, and conveys meaning efficiently. The triangle has become a cultural shorthand that's independent of its factual basis. Educational contexts have struggled with how to handle the triangle. Science teachers sometimes use it as a case study in critical thinking, showing students how to evaluate extraordinary claims and apply scientific reasoning to popular myths. Geography classes mention it when discussing the Atlantic Ocean. But some educational materials still present triangle mysteries uncritically, perpetuating legends rather than examining them skeptically. The triangle has influenced how we think about mystery in general. It established a template for how modern mysteries are constructed, presented, and marketed. The combination of dramatic incidents, selective information presentation, exotic explanations, and cultural timing that made the triangle successful has been replicated in countless other mysteries. The triangle showed that you could create a successful mystery brand in the modern era. What's particularly interesting is how the triangle's cultural impact has become more significant than its factual basis. Whether or not ships and planes actually disappear at unusual rates in the triangle region is, in some ways, less important than the fact that millions of people think they do. The cultural reality of the triangle, its presence in popular imagination, its influence on media and tourism, its use as metaphor and reference, exists independently of the statistical reality. This demonstrates something important about how culture and fact interact in modern society. Truth doesn't always determine cultural influence. Compelling narratives, even if unsupported by evidence, can become culturally significant if they resonate with audiences and adapt successfully across media and time. The Bermuda Triangle is culturally real, even though it's not factually unusual. The triangle has also influenced how we think about the ocean itself. For many people, the triangle represents ocean mystery more broadly. The idea that the sea still holds unknowns, that nature can still surprise us, that human technology and understanding have limits. Whether or not the triangle itself is unusual, it speaks to genuine human uncertainty about ocean spaces. Perhaps the triangle's greatest cultural impact has been keeping alive a sense of mystery in an increasingly explained world. Modern life involves GPS that always knows where you are, satellite imagery that shows every corner of Earth, and scientific explanations for phenomena that once seemed magical. The triangle offers permission to believe that some mysteries remain, that not everything has been explained away, that wonder is still possible. This might explain the triangle's persistence despite thorough debunking. People don't want it to be explained. They want the world to still have mysterious corners, unexplained phenomena, possibilities beyond the mundane. The triangle fulfills this desire and its cultural function, providing a space for mystery and wonder, is more important to many people than its factual accuracy. The Bermuda Triangle in popular culture is ultimately a mirror reflecting human psychological needs rather than geographical reality. It shows us that we're storytelling creatures who need narratives more than facts, that we value entertainment and wonder alongside truth, and that the boundaries between fact and fiction are more permeable than we might prefer to admit. Tonight, we've sailed through centuries of legend, navigated the currents of scientific explanation, and explored the depths of human psychology and culture. We've seen how the Bermuda Triangle was born from genuine tragedies and maritime mysteries, shaped by writers seeking compelling stories, and sustained by human needs for wonder and mystery in an increasingly explained world. We've discovered that the real mystery isn't in the ocean, but in ourselves. In how we see patterns, create meanings, and tell stories about the world we inhabit. The triangle reminds us that truth and belief don't always align, that compelling narratives can outlive the evidence that should dissolve them, and that sometimes the most fascinating questions aren't about what happened, but about why we believe what we believe. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the Bermuda Triangle's waters, both real and imagined. If you're already drifting off, then our mission is complete. But if you're still awake, perhaps another deep dive through one of our previous episodes will carry you gently into slumber. Until we meet again in these quiet hours, may you navigate life's uncertainties with both wonder and wisdom. May you find comfort in mystery while respecting truth. And may you remember that the greatest adventures often lie not in distant triangles of ocean, but in the fascinating territory between what we know and what we imagine.